Good evening, everybody, and welcome. We're so pleased to have you all here tonight. Before we begin, let's recognize and thank our sponsors. TV Scott Free Library and Tomahawk Public Library, for whom this program is part of their long-term commitment to meaningful community civic engagement. UW-Madison Extension, the University of Wisconsin's outreach branch, which for over 100 years has been committed to making the UW system work not only for students, but for every person in the state. And finally, but not least, the League of Women Voters, which since 1920 has delivered nonpartisan election information to American voters. For the record, our sponsors do not support or oppose any political party or candidate, and indeed, through their involvement, our sponsors demonstrate how strongly our community values fair and open public participation in the governing process. I am Don Litzer, retired Assistant Director of TV Scott Free Library, and I will serve this evening as moderator for this evening's forum. Now, before we begin and explain the evening's program format, we just have two favors to ask of you, the audience, which we do sincerely thank for being part of the democratic process this evening. Favor number one, we ask you to please hold your applause until the end of the program and keep the audience noise to a minimum. We are recording this for the voting public to access on the internet later. We were hoping for a live stream, but there's some technical issues up in the cloud raising some problems with that. We are also having this broadcast live by WJMT Blue Jay Radio. So any outside noise will interfere with the microphones and block what our candidates are saying. So please let our candidates be heard. Our second favor, please remember that everyone here is a neighbor, a friend, and a citizen. And just as our candidates have all committed to behaving in a civil manner this evening, we expect and appreciate civil behavior from everyone here. We want everyone to feel comfortable in gaining the information they need to make the best choices for Lincoln County at the ballot box. So while we appreciate your attendance, we ask you to curb your enthusiasm until the end of the program when you can cheer all you want. Now, here's how the format will go. To begin, the three candidates for Lincoln County Sheriff will each be given 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Introductions will take place in alphabetical order. First, Mr. Dinges, then Sheriff Schneider, and finally, Mr. Woodward. The candidates will then be asked questions, which they will each be given 2 minutes to answer. The order in which the first question will be answered was determined earlier today by a random drawing. So Mr. Dinges will answer the first question first, followed by Mr. Woodward, and then Sheriff Schneider. For subsequent questions, a rotation has been established, which the candidates have and will keep track of. The first round of 10 questions are standard questions provided by the library, the League of Women Voters, and UW Extension. These questions have been given to the candidates in advance, and after they are answered, there will be a 5-minute break. And after the break, then we will ask them questions submitted in person and online by the public, and questions we've received online. These questions will be read from the side table here by Elizabeth McCrank, Community Development Educator at UW Extension, Lincoln County. And then just a few ground rules. The timekeeper is sitting in the front row. She will hold up a yellow card as a candidate's time is coming to an end, and a red card when your time is up. If a candidate gives an answer that is unclear or incomplete, I will not press for more information or clarification. Your answer will stand as presented. If you deviate from the question, you will not be given extra time. To make up for it, we'll still apply the 2-minute limit. And then finally, if a candidate references the other candidate in his or her answer, that other candidate will be given 90 seconds for a rebuttal. However, no further time will be given to the topic after that. Following the questions, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to make a closing statement to the public. The order of statements will follow the rotation that we're doing for the questions. And after the closing statements, the program is complete, and you are welcome to cheer on your favorite candidate. So let's get started. Mr. Dinges, please introduce yourself.
Hello, Lincoln County residents. I'm Garrett Dinges, and I'm your candidate for Lincoln County Sheriff. I grew up in the Merrill area and lived in Tomahawk for a short time. I received all my values on who I am today from both my parents. I've been married to the love of my lifetime, Amy, for 25 years, and we have one son, Gavin. I've held different positions in my career. I began as a psychiatric technician working with mentally ill patients on a psychiatric ward. I was employed as an emergency medical technician for 6 years in Tomo. I was a Lincoln County deputy coroner. I worked in law enforcement as a Lincoln County correctional officer for 20.5 years and currently work at Lincoln County Social Services as an economic support specialist. With this background, I have a diverse and different kind of experience than those that have been working decades in this current administration. And my experience would have a positive impact on the community. The time is right for new leadership and direction for the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. I believe it's a privilege and not an entitlement to be sheriff. Every citizen of Lincoln County deserves to live in a safe community and be served by the law enforcement agency that's held accountable to the same standards and rules as the community that they serve. It's time that Lincoln County has a leader that can think outside the box. As sheriff, I will cut unnecessary spending of taxpayer dollars, restore relationships with local law enforcement and social services agencies, reestablish accountability, evaluate the lack of consistency when it comes to the 911 center, bring much needed change to the organization, and end the Good Old Boys Network. The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. This is what Lincoln County has been doing for decades. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Schneider.
Hello, I'm Sheriff Ken. Wow, that's low. Sheriff Ken Schneider. I was born and raised here, grew up on a farm just south of town, raised my family here, had 4 kids, wonderful life. We are, excuse me, I hate public speaking.
With you.
I started in the sheriff's office in 1990. Became a corrections officer, worked 3 years there, and then was put on patrol, our deputy. Worked there many years. I then became a sergeant and was promoted to lieutenant, and ultimately became sheriff. During that time, I was a firearms instructor. I worked as a active shooter instructor and a taser instructor. I became a member of our SWAT team, our tactical team, special response team. I later became the team leader and then the commander of that team. During the time that I was at a lieutenant, when the dispatch center went down a supervisor, they asked me to step in. And I was in charge of the 911 center. When the detective bureau lost a supervisor, they asked me to step in, and I became was in charge of the detective bureau. I worked in almost every part of the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. I know what works, I know what doesn't work. And I am your candidate for sheriff.
Mr. Woodward.
Evening, Mike. My name is Marlon Woodward. I go by Corky in case you want to call me Marilyn. I first entered in, I was inspired into law enforcement through my father, family, brothers, and uncles. They were in American County, 2 brothers in American County, an uncle on Wausau PD, and uncle on Weston PD. Another one that inspired me the most was, while I was going to high school, was our former sheriff and past sheriff, Ron Krieger. He inspired me to join the military and become a military policeman. I served my country for 7 years, and prior to and I entered military police. I was discharged honorably after 7 years, and I came back and worked at ONI for a year, and then I went up to Vilas. I applied for Vilas County and was hired to Vilas County. I worked up there for 2 years and was assigned to the west side of Vilas County, which included the Indian Reservation, Lac du Flambeau. Anyone been up there in that time knows what it was, because they were changing over and becoming a state, going from a state, wanting to come from a state to a federal organization. Then the walleye spearing brought in a lot of discrimination problems and was hard on the family and the people I worked for. I therefore received a call from a buddy in Kansas, and he needed an undersheriff. And I returned to Kansas and was sheriff down, or undersheriff, and then was elected sheriff of Kansas. I graduated with many certificates, law enforcement academy, criminal law, Lawrence, Kansas, certificates. Back in my days, we didn't have a taser, we had a cattle prong. So we didn't use them on people, but we did have cattle because we had cattle wrestling, etc. going on. We had all kinds of different crimes compared to what you have up here. But the reason I'm running it, there are different issues that need to be addressed, and I'm hoping the opponents can take the ideas we share tonight, whether you win. If you win, share our ideas, because the community needs to get more involved.
Thank you, Mr. Woodward.
Okay.
Okay, great. Now we will start with our questions. Question 1, and Mr. Dinges will answer this first. What inspired you to enter law enforcement?
I was raised in a way to respect the rule of law, to behave, to know the right, to know right from wrong, and treat people with respect. My father always said, treat people how you want to be treated. My father was instrumental in getting the Corning Volunteer Fire Department off the ground, along with Bob and Stan Wendt and Gene Kleinschmidt. He saw that there was a problem and took action to resolve it. Every day, I try to be half the man that he was and try to pass that influence on to my son. He taught me to have the ability to relate to and empathize with people from all walks of life. I can very comfortably talk to anybody, from the well-educated college professor to the drug-addled homeless person, thanks to him. I believe I can have some impact on society, give back to the community where I live. For me personally, it's about being the change you want to see.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes. What inspired me to enter law enforcement was my family and history of law enforcement in my family. And therefore, that's why I joined the military, police, and served my country. And I continued my education before and after law enforcement. There are some drastic changes that we may need to be made, change. But, the attacks and people in the community are not being listened to. I talked to many people in the community, and we need to bring law enforcement back into the community, and the community back into law enforcement. Therefore, I throw my hat in the ring.
Thank you. Sheriff Schneid?
What inspired me to become a law enforcement officer? One of my best friends. He's here tonight. I was a year out of high school. I was working on my father's farm. Didn't know what to do with my life yet. Friend told me he was going to apply at the Tech for police science. I thought about it for quite a while, and that year, that fall, we enrolled together in the police science course. I've never thought once that I made the wrong choice. My career in law enforcement has been the most incredible adventure that I could think of. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 2, and Mr. Woodward will be first in line for this one. What is the biggest new challenge that law enforcement has faced in the last 5 to 10 years? And what strategies do you envision using to meet that challenge?
Well, for one, the media has been a big fault, discrediting the law enforcement personnel. So everyone becomes in a shell. They think, all right, we're Madison, we're Chicago, we're Milwaukee. We're not. We're a community, a local community, and we need to bring back the people involvement into the law enforcement so we can work together and resolve our problems. One of the issues is personnel on the sheriff's department need to listen to the people when they complain, receive a call, etc. Other things are, the dispatch center is a big problem. You can go on social media and read all the comments from most of the employees that work there, and false names or whatever, and you find out who they are. There's a communication gap between personnel at the department, and that needs to be resolved drastically. It's just a lot of changes, and everyone's going to have to get involved in one way or another. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff Schneider.
The biggest challenge that I see right now in law enforcement is the national shortage of people, qualified people, to work in law enforcement and related fields. Many theories as to why this is. Whatever you associate for the cause, the issue exists at our agency and many of the agencies in our departments in our county. The impacts of COVID as well as other factors result in the private sector now offering wages and benefit packages that we can't compete with. Right now at the Sheriff's Office, we are trying to streamline the agency. We're trying to make the best of the people that we have right now. This is taking some out of the box thinking. Relocating some people, eliminating some traditional positions that we've had, and creating some other ones. I believe that these will allow us to work more effective and keep the people in Lincoln County safer.
Thank you. Mr. Dinges.
Thank you. Given the last 5 to 10 years of this upside down world where we seem to revere all that's bad and look down and disparage all that was once honorable and held to high esteem, it's become a thankless career where law enforcement has somehow become the bad guys. Never before has the recruitment and retention of law enforcement personnel been as critical and as challenging as it is today. To address these issues successfully, law enforcement leaders must examine the process in an entirely different manner. For recruitment, I will develop a strong, positive employer brand to have a special allure as a great place to work, and that the department is considered an employer of choice to work for. As far as employee retention, people don't leave jobs. They leave managers, supervisors, and administrators. The number one internal factor affecting an employee's decision to stay or leave a job is their relationship with their immediate supervisor. And this is a major issue at this agency. There needs to be a different approach. I will implement an employee voice solution program to help gather, analyze, and improve employee sentiments, which will address the critical issues this agency faces today.
Thank you. Question number 3, and Sheriff Schneider will answer this one first. What innovations do you think are needed in our Sheriff's Department immediately?
Even with all the issues that have arose post-COVID, the Sheriff's Office is actually doing quite well compared to other counties surrounding us. Our working relationship with many of our other agencies and departments in the county has been the best, or is the best that it's been in years. We are currently restructuring some of our training methods that relied on the vast knowledge base that was in our agency, especially in dispatch, to a more structured, basic training, line of training. We have been researching talk-to-text technology, talk-to-text technology, tough one to follow, to assist in some of the time-consuming parts of the job, the report writing, the transcripts. I feel the biggest hurdle that we have is to find an innovative way to compete with the private sector on wages. I'm not sure how we're going to do that yet. Today I was informed that another one of our corrections officers will be leaving for a better paying job in the private sector. Going to a job starting at $26 an hour. We can't compete with that at this time. Hey.
Thank you. Mr. Ginges.
Restoring relationships and strengthening communications between the other local law enforcement agencies and with social services is a priority. One idea would be to integrate the multi-jurisdictional special response team between the other local law enforcement agencies. Tomahawk and Merrill officers would be integrated into this team to better protect our community. Another idea is having unequivocal communications between social workers and law enforcement officers that can have an impact on intervention strategies and conflict resolutions throughout our community. I believe restoring the lack of relationships and the strengthening of communications between these agencies can provide training, enhanced knowledge and skills related to mental illness, substance abuse, and domestic violence present in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Woodward.
Recruiting and training policies, working with the community and a few personnel inside the department. One of the things is we're going to have to revise the standards board on our hiring procedures. It's not fair that a person comes back from overseas and immediately has to get a job at a factory or dump truck driving or something, and he can't apply on the sheriff's department because he don't have the time or expense. Right now, what we're getting out of the academy, I look at people from all over the area, they get out of high school, they go to the academy, and now the departments are grasping at these people, whether they're from here or not here, qualifications or not. There's such a shortage in law enforcement that education and hiring procedures are going to have to be different. The other thing is we need to bring back reserve training. There's nothing wrong with having reserve deputies. It can be properly changed at a cheaper cost. So you have part-time personnel. Instead of having a vehicle and a deputy making $34,000 a year, working in the courthouse, walking the hallways, and parked there with a $48,000 vehicle and $26,000 in equipment just sitting there, not responding to call, just transporting prisoners. I look at putting one of the county transport vehicles over there, and then maybe looking at the utilization of retired police officers, bringing them back to work part-time in the courthouse. So we have two security officers that can work their shift and put this person back on the road. Same as dispatch center, we need to take a look at that and work with the emergency government. Ms. Murphy is very well high trained. She's an asset and can help us. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Question number 4, and Mr. Ginges will be first in line for this one. The Sheriff's Department is one of the most labor-intensive departments in the county, and therefore one of the most expensive. In many professions and businesses, automation and technology are being used to address labor shortages and labor costs. What technological or automation changes could be implemented that would reduce or reverse costs in the department?
Video conferencing technology during the COVID pandemic has effectively and easily connected judges, defendants, interpreters, and law enforcement officers that has had a positive impact on the cost of the effectiveness of our budget. As sheriff, I will further implement this technology to provide a more cost-effective solution. Zucker Technologies is a comprehensive public safety software solution encompassing computer-aided dispatch, mapping, records management, jail management, civil process, criminal investigations, and mobile CAD and records that has been implemented at the sheriff's office for years. I believe that this software is not utilized to its fullest capacity. As a system administrator to the last software suite that the sheriff's department had, there were many analytics that could have been used and were not. Exploring the potential of this current software to reduce labor is a priority. There are other technologies that have had impact on the sheriff's office, including the statewide citation system, which reduced the amount of paper used between multiple agencies. With the most expensive budget in the county, it's time to explore alternative measures and technology to reduce costs without reducing safety and security to the residents of Lincoln County.
Thank you. Sheriff Schneider.
There are large agencies across the county that are using automated technologies. You heard of the, excuse me, the cameras used at red lights. They aren't allowed in Wisconsin, but they are out there. License plate readers, voice analyzing, the facial recognition can all help an officer do his job and keep him safe. At this time, few of those options are cost effective for the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office or practical for our agency. You're still required to have a number of certified corrections officers in the jail. You have to have that. You have to have officers on the road that can respond to the people and secure their safety. You have to have a person in dispatch answering 911 when you call. There may come a time when that is taken over by a computer, but we aren't there. Technology can reduce the time that it takes to write reports or assist in getting humans, responders to a scene quicker. We use those mapping systems and everything. There's no technology that has the courage, the empathy, the understanding, the compassion, or the problem-solving needs to effectively help a person in an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Woodward.
Yes, I agree with both of them on the technology we have today. A lot of time can be saved from an officer returning to the sheriff's department, write out his report or dictate his report. He can do it right in the car, and he can email it to the proper place in the office. The other good thing about technology is the Zoom program that was implied by the courts in the jail, where you don't have to be transporting prisoners all over the county or state, where they can visit with their attorneys and have their court hearings done over Zoom. That would help in many ways, because it would be able to cut the cost of transport vehicles down, and we could bring back more costs into the department, like having some of these transport vehicles and transport time, because it requires deputies and jailers to travel with these prisoners and shortfall the jail staff. Therefore, everyone can work together and work on better relationships and finance issues, so, it's all right. I'm up. So So that's one of the things, cut the wasteful spending.
Thank you, Mr. Woodward. And Mr. Woodward, you're up next for question number 5, which is, what are the gains or losses that you think would result from increased technology and automation in law enforcement?
Well, the gains I just kind of said with the Zoom system and the court system with court hearings, et cetera. Well, that's a good question. Advancement in technology is happening. We can't deny it, and it's going to happen, so we have to accept the technology we're getting today. So, more timely costs, or, it saves us more time for expenses and et cetera. The dispatcher center is the main artery of emergency calls and non-emergency calls. This is where the technology needs to come in more and work with the community and other side agencies. So when you receive a call, it's automatic download and sent right to the squad car. So qualified personnel, okay. Yeah, I know. So that's my answer.
Mr. Dinges.
The gains with video conferencing are huge savings related not only to transportation, but also escorts for inmates and other related expenses. By cutting costs, law enforcement officials can focus more on pressing community issues. And the system also benefits from improved alternative conflict resolution methods. While technology has undoubtedly been beneficial, the losses with many of these advancements have also had adverse and often overlooked aspects. There is an inherent amount of stress involved with learning and applying many of these advanced technologies. Officers are expected to embrace technology and unfortunately do not always receive the proper training needed to use it in a mastery level. Technology can have unintended consequences when officers must pay attention to so many different devices. For example, even through the computer-aided dispatch center, the cell phones, the jail check solutions, and other communication devices, each of them have their benefits. They can be extremely distracting for officers and even dangerous when their full attention needs to be on a single situation. Do the advantages in technology outweigh the disadvantages? That's something that I, as sheriff, will have to evaluate.
Thank you. Sheriff Schneider.
I'm going to read the question again because it's been a while since you heard it.
What are the gains?
Oh,
Sorry. Go ahead.
What are the gains and losses that you think the result of increased technology and automation in law enforcement? Since COVID, we have been using video conferencing for our inmates instead of taking them over for court. There are limits to that because they will not accept someone over there or through video for many of the court appearances. You can't trial by video normally. If you have somebody that's disruptive, they will go to that if they have to, but they want the person there. You cannot do sentencing by video. But we have made big jumps into what will be accepted for video court. And it's taken some strain off of our officers having to have people running back and forth to court all day. Some of the technologies out there do work. I talked about that keeping safe our officers' safety with voice recognition that can tell if there's stress in somebody's voice, or facial recognition that can warn you if there's somebody that has a history. But people also rely on them instead of using the sights and hearing that you have to watch a person's body language, to listen to the tone in their voice. If you rely on that technology, when the technology quits, And it often does. That's why our IT department is so vital in the department. You don't have those skills, and they're needed to be used to keep sharp. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, question number 6, and Sheriff Schneider, you'll answer this first. Besides personnel, one of the other large costs in the Sheriff's Department is for equipment, in particular vehicles. What is your position on the size of the department fleet and how that fleet should be utilized?
A few years before I became sheriff, our agency started the take-home car project. Before, we would purchase 4 squads every year, plus support vehicles for corrections and investigations. The first 2 years of that I had in office, we only needed to purchase 3 cars, squad cars, per year, because of the savings that we were having with the take-home car project. Then COVID hit us, and the automotive chip industry crisis came over. And soon there weren't any vehicles to get. We had to fight to get any vehicles. If we didn't have the take-home squad program at that time, so that we could stretch out the life of these vehicles, we'd be having bigger and bigger problems. Our take-home squads mean that each of our deputies is fully capable to rapidly respond with a fully equipped squad right from their home. If a tornado strikes, if there's an active shooter, we'll have all of our deputies on scene and saving lives in a very short amount of time. This would not be possible without our take-home squads.
Thank you. Mr. Woodward.
Well, one of the things I'll do is reevaluate. I just can't say I'm gonna take away the take-home squads. But one of the things I will do is stress that there were so many complaints about county vehicles being out of the county. Therefore, if we hire a person who lives outside of the county, he will not be able to take that vehicle home, especially with the gas cost of the county the way it is. The other thing is, do we need all these vehicles? Can we share these vehicles? You know, you have to look at a lot of things. I understand people take-home squads are a benefit to emergency calls, and it's used as a recruiting purpose too. Because there are deputies that apply for the county just because they take home a squad. Well, I don't want the people I want. I want people that are committed to the community. So we're going to have to do a lot of changing around here and a lot of study. The other thing is we need to downsize our fleet on the vans because transportation costs, or transportation, unless you're taking them to the state prison or hearing in Madison or something like that. So look at the fleet as a whole and invite the county commissioners or supervisors. They have to come in and see what's going on. They can't sit there and cut the budget because they heard someone take home a squad out of the county. We need to look at everything, but we need to have the county supervisors involved and ride with these people and understand why the take home squads are necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Woodward. Mr. Dinges.
The take-home vehicle program was a significant expenditure item 4 years ago for this department. However, this program has been implemented and now it provides an added police presence in the community. This program provides the ability to quickly respond to emergencies from multiple areas within our jurisdiction and has potential to save money on vehicle maintenance and repair. Added benefits of this program include improving the morale of officers, increasing public safety and security, and providing a positive incentive for recruiting, as long as it continues to be cost effective. Having said that, as sheriff, there will be no squads allowed outside of our jurisdiction. Also, I will evaluate the need for the 911 administrator to have a fully equipped squad. There is no requirement when an emergency occurs that the 911 administrator needs to respond, lights and sirens, to the sheriff's office. I believe this squad can be put into rotation to save added costs to the taxpayers. Additionally, I will reach out and restore a relationship that is non-existent due to the current administration. That relationship is with Belco Vehicle Solutions. Belco is an emergency vehicle outfitting vendor that the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office had previously successfully utilized, and it saved the department time and money. I will ask Belco for a price comparison for maintaining and installing equipment for the squads. If those costs are favorable to the taxpayer, I will ask Belco to rejoin our team. With prices for everything continuing to increase, it's time the residents get the best bang for their buck.
Time up.
Thank you. Question number 7, and Mr. Dingus, you'll get first crack at this. On a related question, given the increasing scarcity of financial resources, how can the department avoid the expensive duplication of resources either within the Sheriff's Department or between the Sheriff's Department and other law enforcement agencies in the county?
During the last 25 years, the cost of law enforcement has risen dramatically across this country. Common sense tells us people tend not to spend other people's money as carefully as they spend their own. If Department A has a tool and then Agency B wants it, 2, officials don't always put much thought into the precise purpose of said tool or whether something else, maybe something that they already have or something cheaper could be achieved the same thing. The integration of a multi-jurisdictional special response team between the other local law enforcement agencies, where all agencies would have a stake, could spread the cost around, which in turn would protect and serve our entire community. Public safety is a foundational in our society. We spend a fortune on it. It seems that it's not too much to ask that we devote some resources to figuring out what works and what does not, and whether we could do better. Thank you.
Mr. Woodward.
Yes, and a related question. Expenses are pretty high right now with the inflation the way it is. However, when we make purchases, we need to justify those purchases with the county's, the community's approval. Therefore, the county board needs to be more involved in what's going on in the sheriff's department and their purchases. Therefore, they can discuss the purchase with their constituents and tell them why we needed this, because they can't just sit up there and justify and put a negative thing against the cost of something we bought without them being involved in the purchases. Need to work more with the finance committee and the county board, but the community needs to know, and I stress, if the community's not involved, then these purchases are going to be unnecessary. We can't keep everything secret because they're going to see it on the street anyway, read about it somewhere. So let's get it together and all work together on, if we need this equipment, justify. This is Lincoln County. We're not Dane County, Milwaukee County, etc. This is where we can come together.
Thank you. Sheriff Schneider.
We seek and want to work close with our law enforcement partners. Each agency is required to provide the services and basic security for their area. We do and we have worked together. The Sheriff's Office has a traffic trailer. This is an enclosed trailer, that is just packed full of traffic cones, signs, and barricades. We try to make this available for every agency that needs it, though there are some times when we don't have the manpower to deploy it. Over the last several years, we've been trying to get it to station at the fire department in the city of Merrill, where everybody would be able to get to it And it sounds like that is finally going to happen. There was always some reason that it couldn't happen. They were redoing the parking lot or something was going on, but it sounds like that is going to happen. We have an armored vehicle. It's a rescue vehicle. It's for our officers, for Merrill officers, for all the officers in the state that need it when called. We've trained with Merrill. Most of them have driven it, except they're new officers. They know how to get it to a scene where it can be used by people that are trained to use it, but they can get it there. We've tried in the past for the last 5 years. While I was team leader, we are still trying to get Merrill officers as part of our response team. There are always financial issues that would not let it happen at the time. I'm proud to say that over the last 6 months, our officers at our tactical team. Thank you.
Question number 8, and Mr. Woodward, you'll be first. Yes? What is the role of law enforcement in emergency planning, and what are the foreseeable circumstances that the department should be preparing for?
There are numerous emergencies we need to start preparing for, and one is there's going to be increased home invasions and crimes. Other thing is that for emergency planning, we need to work with the emergency management. And I plan on working with Ms. Murphy and having her involved in the Sheriff's Department, communication, etc., and working closely on how we can do things. These are departments that can work together that are actually being used in a wrong, wasteful manner. We need more involvement. Again, the county board is responsible for emergency planning just as well as everything else. There are going to be higher crimes, and higher crimes come with a cost. And again, we got to evaluate this cost and how it's spent.
Thank you. Sheriff Schneider.
How about cheat? 2 Merrill officers are joining our team shortly. Law enforcement is one of those professions where you have to prepare for everything and anything. Traffic or train incidents that involve hazardous materials, plane crashes, weather events, fires, active shooters, anything that endangers the people of Lincoln County, and we will be involved in one way or another. We all train in some way, as much as we can, but we have specialized people trained in how to find lost people, crowd control, hostage negotiation, dive teams, tactical calls, cell extractions, and fires. Can't name them all. We can also rely on the fire departments and the police departments and the highway department in our county and all the surrounding counties to come on call. What are the foreseeable circumstances that we should be preparing for? Everything. And I know that if we can't handle it, there are 72 other counties out there who will send help as fast as they can at the drop of a phone call. Same way that we've responded to their needs in the past. You only need to look as far back as Kenosha and Madison. Thank you.
Mr. Dinges.
Law enforcement agencies are an essential part of managing emergencies in any community. Their knowledge and innate understanding of local obstacles can help save lives and improve overall response times. In this way, emergency management by law enforcement officials will set the tone for successful recovery. 4 years ago, this current administration promised to implement the mutual aid box alarm system. MABUS is the mutual aid measure that is used for deploying fire, rescue, and emergency medical service personnel in a multi-jurisdictional and/or multi-agency response. Participation is voluntary. Equipment, personnel, or services provided under MAVIS are at no charge between municipalities. And yet, unfortunately, to this very date, it's not implemented. With recent events that happened in Uvalde, Texas, and the current circumstances surrounding the lack of communication there between all the agencies is a major concern. In Lincoln County, all schools are located in the city's jurisdictions. As sheriff, I refuse to let another Uvalde, Texas happen in this county. I will immediately join the North Central Emergency Response Team, which is a law enforcement mutual aid system operating in North Central Wisconsin. It provides immediate extra law enforcement officers and equipment at the scene of law enforcement emergencies. It's time to let go of past record wrongs between agencies. When an administration holds grudges, it has a ripple effect throughout their subordinates, which becomes a learned and acceptable behavior. We need to come together as agencies to protect and serve this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Don't get that.
Yes, you got a 90-second rebuttal.
Our sheriff's office is already involved in I forget what the name of it was, I don't have it written down because I didn't know it was coming. But where we can rely on other agencies to respond to our office. We also have the MAVIS program, their system that he's talking about, and we're waiting on the fire departments to get us their cards. That hasn't happened. That's all. We're waiting for it to happen. When talking to Oneida County, their officers love it, their dispatch loves it. We're waiting on the fire departments to respond with their cards so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 9, and Sheriff Schneider, you'll be first with this one. We're number 9. Many issues that the Sheriff's Department has to address are issues that impact multiple segments of the community, and there are multiple resources available to assist in addressing those issues. How do you see the Sheriff's Department maximizing the value of these community resources to try and solve these issues?
We work with many stakeholders in our community. Before I explain further on that, you have to understand that the Sheriff's Office has to comply with numerous legal restrictions which are in place to offer due process for the law, protect privacy, protect crime victim rights, and confidentiality of information which might impact the lives of the citizens that we're helping. Within those limits, we do work with our volunteer fire departments, Haven, St. Vinny's, Red Cross, Salvation Army, Northwich Search and Rescue, Mobile Crisis, to name a few. Thank you.
Mr. Dinges.
In addition to law enforcement responding to and preventing crime, officers now have the added challenge, including de-escalation situations with people experiencing mental illness, caring for people who have overdosed on opioids, and connecting community members to services. The current opioid epidemic is unprecedented in American history. As sheriff, I will examine programs such as LEAD, law enforcement assisted diversion, that seeks to connect people with opioid use disorder with treatment and social services. Individuals would be assigned a case manager who works with law enforcement and prosecutors to create and maintain an individual recovery plan, which would reduce overdose deaths, future incarcerations, and provide a safer and secure community. There are multiple grants through the Department of Health Services just sitting there waiting to be utilized. As a community, we also need to reimagine the possibilities of jail incarceration, so we don't keep seeing the revolving door syndrome. We don't want inmates to simply avoid returning to jail. We want them to work, pay taxes, take care of their families, and volunteer in our communities. I will break this revolving door syndrome by implementing innovative and evidence-based alternatives and technologies to effectively treat substance abuse and mental health disorders by using existing community supervision, social services, outreach, volunteer and religious groups to improve the service delivery behind the walls of the jail, and help with re-entry support to ensure that offenders don't return to drug use, crime, and old social connections and environments again and again.
Mr. Woodward.
Yeah, working together is one of the things that is a must. We need to work with Tomahawk PD, Merrill PD, and fire departments, township fire departments, EMTs, hospital staff, everyone needs to work together. Working, community care, or mutual aid comes from other counties. We can't put a price on life. When there's a life or a threat, those people are going to respond. Mutual aid is already out there and needs to be utilized so we don't cost more to the taxpayers or whatever. But one of the things we're working, we need to work more with social service, more central health care, and more combination for training in these fields. Resources are for mental health and how better to handle these situations depends on the personnel working together. You can't go to social service or another department and say, here's my report, here's the case. We need to work together and work on the case as a whole. I get the next slide. So, okay. So there's more discussions that need to be made, and so mutual aid is one of the biggest programs that need to be looked at. Okay.
Thank you.
You're halfway through your 2 minutes.
You like me?
All right, question number 10. And Sheriff Schneider, you'll answer this one first. People commonly suggest that new blood and new ideas are needed in the Sheriff's Department. But every candidate here is a veteran of law enforcement. What makes you or your ideas new compared to any other candidates?
I believe the question goes to Mr. Dingus first.
Yeah, and I don't think.
Oh,
that-
excuse me, you're
I don't
Correct,
think
sorry about that. Mr. Digis, yes.
Thank you. Like any organization, every law enforcement agency needs a strong, healthy work culture to operate effectively. However, this has not been the case at Lincoln County Sheriff's Office for many years. Lincoln County is in a rough spot, and the current sheriff has lost respect and confidence of the people that work for him. As sheriff, I want employees to feel they have a voice without fear of retaliation or backlash for expressing honest opinions. I want employees to stand up and say the things that need to be said. Far too long, the Good Old Boys Network has held employees down, and this will change. I will be the first to admit when I make a mistake and take responsibility for that mistake. I'm not afraid of standing up for honesty, integrity, and transparency. The way to right wrongs is to shine the light of truth on them. When we still have old school thinking, nothing will ever change. I have the ability to think differently, and I'm not beholden to certain ways of doing things. It's time to take action instead of continuing to talk about the issues. Some ideas may work, some may not. But we, and I mean all employees at the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, should come together and find the way for our community. Isn't that worth a shot? When elected your sheriff, I will be that leader that will think outside the box for the betterment of our department and the community that I serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Sheriff Schneider.
Is that, no, you're objecting.
Oh, no.
If someone speaks the truth, they should be listened to. If someone disrespects or degrades their supervisor, or is in gross insubordination, those people are relieved of duty and let go from the agency. That's what some folks will then call a good old boys club. That does not exist in our agency. They say new blood, new ideas are needed. Other people say that having experience and knowing what has been tried and failed in the past is important. Experience tells you what would violate union rules or FLSA rules. Experience can tell you what you can purchase and what just isn't in the budget right now. Having experience doesn't mean that you're not open to new ideas. Having experience doesn't mean the old way is the only way. Having experience lets you look at new ways or new ideas, and with the knowledge that you accumulated from working every part of the agency to make the best decision for the county.
Thank you. Mr. Woodward.
There. I hadn't worked in the sheriff's department. I don't know nothing about the good old boys or the clique. And to say that I'm gonna go in there and fire this, or I'm gonna break up a clique or a group, or, it's wrong. I mean, we all get tired of hearing this because this is not what the public wants to see. One of the things, I'll go in there with an open mind. I'll look over everyone's file, and I'll place them where their skills are needed. I can see firsthand what exactly is happening, so therefore I can't say I'm going to fire anyone or make any drastic changes until I reevaluate and look at the thing as a whole. I want to hear from the employees, the deputies, lieutenants, everyone. I even want to hear from the chief of police, basically even board members, and what we can do to resolve it. If there's any personal problem, it's going to be dealt with within the department. If I did win this write-in, would I fire Kenny Schneider? No, I'd let him finish off his term. They did that for Ron Krieger too. And would I rebel against him? No, but he would have had to accept some of these changes. One of the things Sheriff Krieger told me many years ago was, you can't get elected and be a sheriff and have friends. You have to be a sheriff. And once you make friends, they'll run over you. And he said, I learned before. So I'm taking that advice. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, that ends the first half of the debate. And we'll take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back here as promptly as we can. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we are proceeding with our second half of this evening's program. We have 9 questions, either presented online or from the audience. So they are going to be asked by Elizabeth McCrank from UW Extension at Lincoln County. And then we'll have closing statements after that. So, question number 1.
Before I begin, gentlemen, let me make everyone in the audience aware that these are questions that were either submitted on the website from the Tomahawk Public Library or the T.B. Scott Free Library in Merrill, or they were brought to us personally by members of the audience or submitted by members of the community. All of the questions that were submitted are available for anyone to examine. They can come to the UW Extension office in the County Service Building for either the candidates or any member of the public and see what the entire range of questions were, should they have any concern about questions that may not have been used. We tried to select questions that were representative of topics. If they were too specific or they were duplicates of other questions, we tried to combine them. But as a result, if anybody has any concerns about questions that were used or not used, those are available to anyone during business hours at the extension. That's 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So having said that, I will say that questions from the public are probably significantly more colorful and exciting than the questions that the rest of us created. And so you may find these more pleasurable, if not as long. Some of them are long. So the first question. In Lincoln County, specifics of sheriff calls, felony arrests, and mugshots are not disclosed to the public unless the press happens to ask about them. Should the sheriff change that current practice, and if so, how?
Mr. Woodward, you'll be first to answer.
Thanks. I don't know much about the policy of the mugshots or how this is done or how it's shared, but I do believe that it's basically up to the court or the state to decide if these mugshots are to be shared or not. I don't see how it benefits us unless there's a Crime Stopper thing where we need to share that mugshot, or if there's an emergency broadcast, this person committed another crime, yes, I'll share that mugshot and the details of his history. But to share it just publicly, I don't care for that. But if they file for an open records request, then I have no choice if it's approved.
Thank you. Mr. Dinges.
So with mugshots and the technology, we have the opportunity. We have a Lincoln County Sheriff's website, and all mugshots are considered open records. We do the caseload or the case calls in the Merrill Photo News and the Tomahawk Leader. As sheriff, I would look into re-upping our website to actually post all that information on there. It's public record. As a community, we should decide what we need to see and what we don't need to see. But as far as mugshots go, it's all open records anyways and can be publicly displayed. I kind of like that idea of showing those, telling what the department does on a daily basis. Thank you.
Sheriff Schneider.
All the things asked in that question are under open public record. So any one of you can contact the sheriff's office at any time, business times, and request an open record. To post them on a regular basis is going to require somebody having to do that. We're short-staffed already. So yeah, whether it's a good idea or not, but to post them and post everything, I don't know. But any one of you can file an open records request and get any of the information that they ask.
Okay, question number 2, Mr. Schneider will answer first.
Should deputies give more warnings or more tickets? And what is the criteria that should be used to determine which is used when? I told you these were more interesting.
When we were talking about technology a little while ago, this is why we have humans here. They have discretion in their duties. written warnings, verbal warnings are for those people who are going just over the speed limit, who are, in violation, but you feel as an officer, using your discretion, that a stern "don't do that" will have the same effect as to hit them with a large citation. Should we write more citations? What do you all think? No. There is a place for it, though. When you have people, and for whatever reason after COVID, it's insane. The number of people who are driving 100 miles an hour plus. As a patrol officer, I had one at 98. I never had somebody on radar over 100 miles an hour. Now it's happening every week. That is dangerous. That needs to have citation. On 100 miles an hour over, you're an automatic suspension. I don't know that that is strong enough, quite frankly. When you're going 100 miles an hour, it's not a mistake. I didn't accidentally get over the speed limit. I've driven 100 miles an hour in a squad with lights and sirens. You know you're going 100 miles an hour. There's no reason for that.
Thank you. Mr. Woodward?
Yeah. The discretion should be up to the officer, whether he makes the call or not. If it's a written warning, a verbal warning, that's fine. My belief that that officer was hired or working for me, I would accept his way of thinking on the road. However, with all the, as Kenny said, with all the interstate going through and 51 and weekend traffic, there's a numerous amount of road rage, and I know many people out there have seen it firsthand. Yes, I wouldn't recommend warnings on the interstate when it involves road rage or etc. It's very drastic out there for these people to travel on the interstate. But when you're in a community, you know it's a community, and it's like here in Merrill, there's a homecoming game on, just give them a little courtesy and respect, and some people do that, respect that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dinges?
So as a citizen, I would say no violation, no tickets. That's just me personally. But I agree with the other two, that it's actually the discretion of the officer. In my career, I've seen when new deputies get hired, they have this bravado that they just go out and gotta write as many tickets as we can. Where the senior officers, they have more of that discretion to look at warnings instead of writing that citation that's going to cause financial burden on the citizen. It's kind of a fine line that we got to kind of look at seniority and new officers, and with the amount of tickets and warnings that we could potentially issue. I think it's more of a seniority thing than anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to question number 3, and Mr. Dinges will answer this one first.
Of the elected county board, the elected district attorney, the elected sheriff, or the elected county judges, who makes the law in the county?
Wow, that's a good question. Each entity has their own things that they can do. County board can write ordinances, but as far as the law goes, that's by the state statute. district attorneys would prosecute that, and the district judges would sentence on it. So the county board doesn't really have a say in actual laws, but ordinances. Thank you.
Mr. Woodward.
Well, the county board revises and sets, changes ordinance, and county ordinances are implicated by the county board. The judges and district attorneys and municipal judges, they're there to enforce the laws that are on the books. But the laws are usually, are rolled up by the state legislation in the state and voted on and documented and put into the books, and those are the laws that we enforce. The city has an ordinance law that also needs to be enforced. So there's many areas of law that are being developed. You have county ordinances, you have city ordinances, you have township ordinances, and then you have the state laws. And those laws are made up by the boards. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff Schneider.
Well, I know that the sheriff's office doesn't write the laws, because I imagine it would look a lot different than it does right now. County board, they do create ordinance, our county ordinances, in conjunction with state law. Our DA's office just prosecutes the violations that we enforce. We enforce them by writing a ticket. We enforce them by making arrests. The judges hear those trials and make sure that it is determined to be a fair trial, and then to make sentence if they are found guilty. The people you send to Madison are the ones that make the laws. And we're about to come up on election where this is going to be very important for this county to pay attention to the people we're sending to Madison. So please do a little research when you make your vote.
Thank you. Question number 4, and Mr. Woodward will answer this one first.
What should the Sheriff's Department do about the constant and widespread use of fireworks at times other than the 4th of July?
Well, then there again, we're back to the laws. You got county ordinance and city ordinance and state laws, and if these fireworks aren't in to be utilized because of those ordinance and laws, the laws will be enforced. So therefore, you go by the law. If there isn't an ordinance, if it isn't against the law to use it, there's nothing we can really do except ask them to respect their neighbors. So,
Thank you. Mr. Sheriff Schneider.
Fireworks on the 4th of July. Yeah, everybody gets to have fireworks on the 4th of July. The widespread use outside of that, it depends. You can get a permit from your township to set off fireworks on any day of the year. They often get them on New Year's. People will be setting off fireworks on New Year's. If they have a permit, they're allowed to do that. It's not illegal. We can't enforce it. So when we arrive on scene of a complaint of fireworks, if we can locate it, oftentimes they'll say it was over there on the other side of the lake. I don't know where that is. But if we can enforce it and they don't have a permit, we can issue citations for that.
Thank you. Mr. Dinges.
There are the county ordinances and the local townships that do issue the permits, as Sheriff Schneider said, and the enforcement, as long as they have the permits, they should be good to go. But here's the thing, as human beings in society, we've walked away from talking with our neighbors. If you're gonna have fireworks, we need to get back in introducing ourselves to our neighbors. It's just common courtesy. This world has been turned upside down and everybody's at each other's throats. We just need to get back to humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 5, and Sheriff Schneider will answer this one first.
Should the county develop an embedded social worker program to respond to mental health situations so that deputies don't need to use force during someone's mental health crisis, and why or why not?
And what was the last part? I'm sorry.
Should the county develop an embedded social worker program to respond to mental health situations so that deputies don't need to use force during someone's mental health crisis, and why or why not?
Mental health issue has become a serious issue for all of Lincoln County. The healthcare center doesn't have enough people to do their jobs. So when someone with mental health issues isn't getting the help they need through the healthcare center or other agencies because they're short of people, they often end up in our jail because there's no place else to go with them. And it's very sad that that happens. Using force on someone is the last thing that we want to do. Wasn't that long ago when I was on the road that I would run into somebody experiencing mental health issue of some sort, and you talk and talk and talk and talk to try and get them to cooperate. Doesn't always work. Having a dedicated person from social services be a fantastic idea. Dedicated people cost money. We don't have enough people to fill in the shoes that we have to fill now. Creating another person, I'd be all for it, but I don't think it's gonna happen. They cost money.
Thank you. Mr. Dinges.
So I work at social services. Having an embedded social worker with that's part of the law enforcement agency is a bad idea. 2 reasons: safety and security. What we need to do is we need to restore the relations with social services in our community. I've had discussions with a lot of these workers, and for mental health crisis, what we need is we need better training for our officers in de-escalation for mental health issues. When I worked in the jail, I could basically talk anybody off a ledge. I had that training. I came from a mental health facility. I know basically how to talk to people. And what our county is lacking is that communications with social services to provide basic services to our community for people with mental health illness. And we need to do some de-escalation. But as far as having a social worker on staff, that would be a bad idea. Thank you.
Mr. Woodward.
Well, there should already be a policy in place on this. Negotiators need to be trained when they're negotiating with a mental health patient. And a lot of times, I think in the county, in the sheriff's department, we should contract, whether it's under our budget or not, have a staff member or a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner psychiatrist on call. A lot of counselors are counselors, but we need an actual person that can deal and work with the deputies and the victim and work with the negotiator on this situation. I myself, being a veteran, I've been called many times at night to take a veteran down to Milwaukee because he was suicidal and he wasn't gonna ride with any cops, he wanted to shoot the cops. A 4-hour ride with another veteran, brother, trying to save his life and get him some help. Yes, I've driven him down to Milwaukee, I've driven veterans down to Toma, I found appropriate places, and there's a lot of good things about this in the outcome, but we need something in mental health, plus suicide, with the economy the way it is, it's gonna be high. So I'd prepare myself by contracting someone within the department or bring someone in the outside into the department. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 6, and Mr. Dinges will answer this one first.
What community resources would you enlist to provide for or address mental health and drug abuse issues within the jail population?
So, for community resources, we have all these programs, and especially with the technology that we have today. Social services, religious, community supervision. There's no reason that we can't have these individuals on a Skype or a Zoom at any time of the day. Right now at the jail, there's a psychiatrist that comes in once a week to see multiple patients in a 1-day period. And it is over Skype, but we can further that technology to allow the inmates to have at least 24 hours a day contact with these individuals. There's a lot of religious organizations out there that would love to come into a jail, but because of safety and security reasons, they can't. But we do have that technology for video conferencing. It's very prevalent in the jail, the mental health issues that are going on, because when somebody comes into contact, it's basically just to rearrest them, then take them to the jail. And now it's the staff members that have to deal with it. And our staff members at Lincoln County Sheriff are not trained in mental health issues. But with restoring the relations with social workers and social services, we can bring and have more training, and especially with the Department of Health Services, to bring in those individuals to help train our staff. Thank you.
Sheriff Schneider.
Currently, the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office has a contract with the healthcare facility in Wausau. They are supposed to come to our jail and have personal visits with suicidal inmates. Or if we bring somebody in that is suicidal, they are supposed to come and have a personal contact with them. Doesn't happen. They don't have anybody to do it. We get them on the phone, sometimes we can get them on the video. Our jail is currently switching over to I'm lost for words on the technology, iPad or something like that, where each person can get one of those in the morning. They can make their phone calls through that. It will give, instead of just the spot on the wall where you can go and make a phone call, they'll actually be able to take it with them and make their phone calls around the jail. No cost to the county, by the way. This company's paying us to do this. Twice a week we have religious groups come in right now. One for the females, one for the males. They have a service. It's, I don't know what denomination they are. I'm guessing it's multi-jurisdictional, multi-denomination, but twice a week they are allowed to come in. We have, Haven comes in and does classes, AODA, and other classes. The tech I'm sorry. Is that it? Okay, thank you.
She threw me out.
See that red one?
You bet.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes, there are things that we have to grasp at. Things aren't being funded properly. We need to work more with the health department and the county supervisors. I'd rather complain, scream, and holler than I have someone commit suicide in my jail. The other thing, when I say we grasp at things, we have deputies out there that have been veterans and jailers that have been veterans. They know how to talk a veteran, suicidal veteran, how to commit suicide. That initial contact, they have this great communication together with veterans talking with each other. Again, we're going to have to drastically make some changes on this mental health issue because the economy the way it is now, I think we're going to have an increase in suicide, mental health, domestic disturbance, and the main goal is to prevent it before it happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 7, and Mr. Woodward will answer this first.
This is kind of a follow-up question, it seems. What processes or programs would you implement in the jail to help reintegrate people back to the community, besides just parole, to reduce their chance of recidivating?
Now, one of the things is we have community care out there. We're not utilizing or following up on this community care. When someone's sentenced to community, so many hours to work, we should have someone there to monitor them to make sure that community service is being done and that their hours are being put out there. This has been neglected. We can have them shovel at the 4-H barn, we can have them mowing the lawn, and we can have the supervisor that runs these departments check on them to make sure they're doing their community service. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dinges?
So I brought up already LEAD, Law Enforcement Diversion. It is a great program out there that's not being utilized in this county. It basically takes people with either you can use it for mental health disorders or opioid disorders, and then it gets prosecutors and social workers to help these individuals with not coming back to the jail. When I worked there, it was like a revolving door. And I call it the revolving door syndrome. You see them come in the back door, out the front door, and come right back in the back door. And I started seeing family members, next generation, kids coming back into the jail. Community supervision, that doesn't work because the guys just, they think it's a joke. You can't help the helpless. What we need to do is those people that want the help, we have social services programs, we have religious programs, community outreach programs. What we need to do is we need to get these guys away from their old social environment that they're just going to be part of. Some guys have. I've worked in the jail and have talked to some of these inmates that are now flourishing in our community. It's just we need to get them the help that they need, and hopefully we can do that one day. Thank you.
Mr. Sheriff Schneider?
Currently in the Lincoln County Jail, we just started up classes again because of COVID, we didn't have them going. But currently, the Tech in Wadawassa has high school equivalent programs. You can get their degree or not their degree, I don't know what it's called. It's not like a high school diploma, but it's a degree that says you equivalent or pass the equivalent high school education. They can get that in our jail. They also have, in the last 2 years, started, or 2 years before COVID, they started a welding program where tech comes in and using the computers and using the classroom parts of the welding program are all done in our jail. Anybody that wants to go to this can go to the classes, get all the school part out of it, and if, with an incentive, hoping that they will go and finish it off at the Tech. Like I said, we have our people coming in to help with religious services, but I hope to, when things start quieting down again, to get more classes available through the Tech, because they're already coming to do them.
Thank you. Let's see, we are, Mr. Wood.
We're closing in on the end, guys, but this is a long question, so just bear with me.
Okay.
Tom? Sorry. Oh, sorry, please. Yeah.
Yes, question number 8, Mr. Sheriff Snyder will answer that first.
Okay, so, this is the long one. Tomahawk has a full police department, Merrill has a full police department, and some towns in the county even have constables. Yet the sheriff's department is so large that it consumes the greatest part of the county budget. And taxpayers have to fund this duplication or even triplication of services. Should we get rid of one or more of these departments, and if so, which one?
Sheriff Snyder.
Hold on, I'm still writing.
Wow, okay. The Tomahawk Police Department and the Merrill Police Department have jurisdictions that they can enforce the law in. That is the city of Tomahawk and the city of Merrill. The sheriff's office is responsible for the other 890 square miles of the county. Constables do not have statutory arrest powers. They can do ordinance, but they can't do state law. Can we get rid of some or all? I hope not, because that would mean that the sheriff's office is now responsible for the city of Tomahawk and the city of Merrill also, and we'd have to go larger. That's the best I can answer that question.
Mr. Woodward.
Well, constables are utilized as a benefit to the sheriff's department. Otherwise, you got deputies tied up on barking dog complaints, dog leashes, dog running at large, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really the town chairman or town supervisor to resolve the constable situation. Having to work with them, yes, they're good, they're good contacts, the neighborhood, et cetera, and the people. And if they see something, okay, their constables do get complaints that they're out there too, just like rather deputy, but they're enforcing township ordinances. A lot of times you'll see drugs turning out over in somebody's yard, and they'll share that information, or they'll share this stuff with us. So it's up to the township whether they want to get rid of the constable or not me. Thank you.
Mr. Dinges.
That is correct. Tomahawk Police Department has their own jurisdiction. Merrill Police Department also has their own jurisdiction. The Lincoln County Sheriff's budget is the largest budget in this county. We need to streamline resources between all the other agencies. If we do that, we can save the taxpayers money. There's some stuff that Tomahawk does, there's some stuff that Merrill does, and there's some stuff that Lincoln County takes care of. This budget is outrageous for the county. I always say I'm a student of history, and I like President Calvin Coolidge. When he was elected president, he came in and line item budgets everything in the United States budget. If I get elected, my first day in office, I'm going to take a look at the budget and examine every line item budget. If there's duplications between the Tomahawk Police Department and the Merrill Police Department, that's something that our county residents don't need to pay duplicate for. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on to question number 9, and Mr. Ginges will answer this one first.
So this is the final question before you gentlemen give summaries. So this question reads, how should the sheriff build morale within the department and encourage officers and the department to build relationships with the community?
Mr. Ginges?
Thank you.
Do you need me to reread the question?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you. As I said before, for morale for our officers in the department, retention is a big factor at the Lincoln County Sheriff's Agency. It's a major concern. And as I said, people don't need jobs. They don't need jobs for more money. You can throw as much money against the wall as you want. They leave because of managers, supervisors, and administrators. And within this agency, there's a huge major concern. When I was growing up, I was more scared of my old man than I was the officers. But the reason that I was scared of my old man was because all the officers knew who he was, because they had seniority in this county. They were here. They made a career out of it. If I got out of line, they knew who my dad was and called him. Thus, me being scared of him. Right now, the turnover rate at the sheriff's office is between 1 and 5 years, and it's getting worse and worse as we go on. Pretty soon, we are not going to have any senior officers that can be part of this community because they're always looking for different jobs. This is something that needs to change at this sheriff's office. Thank you.
Mr. Woodward?
Yeah. To retain can you repeat that question again?
So the question reads, how should the sheriff build morale within the department and encourage officers and the department to build relationships with the community?
To build the morale, you have to credit an officer when he does a good job. And you have to, there's rewards out there, but you can't, you got to look at the morale and everything. And, if you see a problem that's happening within the department, you need to resolve it by breaking this group up or whatever. You hear about this good old boy, the clique and everything, and most of you guys are standing out here, and I looked over everything and bring more in education and public relations into the department, from the outside and the inside. You can't just go on Facebook and post your frustrations about some comment or something. You got Willie B. Nice, R.J. Lee, and what's her name that's a dispatcher. I think most of these guys know that there is a problem, and we got to fix this before it gets out of hand. So you have to reward the good ones, and you have to work with the weed out the bad ones.
Thank you. Sheriff Schneider.
Every election, when it comes around, you would think that the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office is the most evil and horrible place to work. I disagree. I think almost all of the people that work there would disagree. We are losing people. When we exit interview people, it's because of money. When you can make $5 or $6 an hour more in the private sector, I don't blame them. I mean, they've got a family to take care of. And, you know, I'm glad you work for us, I'd take you back, but I see why you have to leave. Yeah, is everybody happy at the sheriff's office? Is everybody happy at the place you work? I imagine not. We have a great group of people at our sheriff's office. Fantastic group of people at our sheriff's office. Whenever I see a community event out there, I post it on a department-wide email encouraging my officers to stop in. Some of them do. There's a few. Not everybody wants to do that kind of thing. I don't force them. But we have officers that really enjoy going out and getting into the community. I encourage that. I'm not going to say, you need to be on the road. No, they need to be with the people. And we encourage that, and it does happen. Guess that's all I'm going to say about it.
All right. So it is time for closing statements. And each candidate will get 3 minutes. And we'll begin with Mr. Woodward.
4 years ago, I ran for sheriff, or I ran Pete for sheriff. I was on his campaign, Pete Borker. I was part of his campaign, and I supported him dearly because what I seen was we needed an outsider with law enforcement experience to come inside to see, to not hold any favors or know anyone, but to bring his skills as much needed. I knew Kenny, I respected him. And campaigns are really about mudslinging, and I've said I'm never going to get into mudslinging again on a campaign. But I didn't think Kenny would be a leader. One of the reasons was when my father hired him, he asked me, he says, you know this Kenny Schneider? I said, yeah, he's a good guy, and Dad drives bus. A few months later, he says, God, Kenny's good, but he'll never make a leader, but he's good with the people. So I respected that, and I remembered that. So, nothing against Kenny, I respect him as a person too, but as a leader, I got questioned. So I watched the campaign and I threw my hat into the ring as a writer because I didn't like what I was seeing. You had one good guy, or one guy and another guy in the department running and saying things about Kenny. Well, now, all of a sudden, this guy's a good guy and now he's under here. Mr. Dingus has good ideas, but, you know, we gotta work more with the community, and I think he can do that. So, you know, everybody has good ideas, and that was the reason I threw my hat in the ring, because I was hoping changes would happen, but I foresee another problem coming into the sheriff's department. Thank you.
Sheriff Schneider.
To put to rest a little bit about Lieutenant Peterson, he put in his papers in because he wasn't sure that I was going to run. And to tell you the truth, up until the last little bit, I wasn't sure I was going to run. I was looking forward to another election year, and I really hate the politics and what it does to people. I really had to think long and hard before I put my papers in. to do this, just because of the election, what it happens during the election, and what it does to people. I have worked here for 32 years in almost every aspect of this department. Very proud of that. And I'd like to retain my position as sheriff with your vote, because I think experience counts. Thank you.
Mr. Dinges.
Thank you to my wife, son, family, friends, and residents of Lincoln County for your continuous support. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, TV Scott, and Tomahawk Library, and the UW Extension, and for all of you coming here and watching online tonight. The sheriff is accountable directly to the United States Constitution and ultimately the citizens of this county. Not the county board, not the county administrator, and not the county attorney. The sheriff takes guidance from them, but it's only accountable to you, the residents of Lincoln County. The sheriff has oversight of the department's operations and budgeting, oversight of officers, production and development of departmental policies and regulations, and managing the jail. The majority of the staff at the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office are hardworking, dedicated to the job, but they are lacking leadership and direction. I came to a profound conclusion while out campaigning throughout Lincoln County. From the first responders, law enforcement officers, correctional officers, and 911 dispatchers, to the young engaged couple and the older couple that recently recovered from COVID in Tomahawk, to the elderly gentleman who received terminal news about his wife, to the Cordova family, and each and every resident that I spoke to in Lincoln County was this. The most important thing to all of them was to be heard. Someone to take the time and listen to them. To be a great leader, you have to be a great listener. I vow to be that type of leader for our community. Vote Garrett Dinges on November 8th, and with your support, Lincoln County will finally have a leader they can look to and trust. Thank you for your support. God bless you, Lincoln County, and the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. Dinges. And thank you so much to all the candidates for your service to the community and for your desire to serve our community. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, UW Madison Extension, Lincoln County, and TV Scott Free Library and Tomahawk Public Library. And thank you to all of you here assembled. We certainly hope you vote on Election Day, and thank you for your support of democracy in our community. Have a great evening. Thank you.